what human strengths do we as researchers have that we should be doubling down on if we can use AI for things? They are being authentic and genuine, having someone real to talk to. Biting into like a real orange is obviously always way better than like a fake orange juice. So I think that's always going to be true with humans. It's going to be influence, as we've talked about, and it's going to be asking the right questions. And I think those are our three human strengths as researchers.
Hey, welcome to Awkward Silences. I'm Ben. Today's episode is all about collaboration, influence, and building the future, even when you might not know exactly what it looks like. My guests to help us take on that topic are Shalin Pei, who is the head of design and research at Base for Coinbase, and Natalie Golub, who is the head of UXR at Base, also for Coinbase. Now, Base is an interesting product, as you'll hear. It does a lot. It has a lot of different customers and users. It's a network that offers a secure and low-cost way for anyone to build decentralized apps on chain. So it's part of the crypto space more broadly. And in our conversation, we do talk a little bit about that area and that industry. So if you're interested in it, stay tuned. But we spend the most of our time talking about how teams that work at really scrappy, innovative, and really fast-moving industries can structure themselves so that they can both execute and do the work that they're hired there to do, but to make sure that they have rigor, influence, and that they can sustain that work. So it's a really good conversation for anyone building a team or working on a team, especially if you are a designer or researcher or someone who collaborates with those two teams. Natalie and Shalin have really, really great perspective. They've worked at small companies and big companies, and Coinbase is moving fast and doing some really, really interesting stuff. So here's my conversation with Shalin and Natalie of Coinbase. Enjoy. Natalie and Shalin, welcome to Awkward Silences.
Hi, thanks for having us.
So excited to talk about all the things. In our back and forth, I think, mislabeling what Coinbase does, trying to be cool using, DeFi, blockchain, using all my acronyms. So one of the things I'm hoping our listeners can get out of this conversation is a bit more understanding about that space from your POV. And also, I really want to dig into collaboration, scale, and how you've structured the work between and within your teams. I'm just so interested in how different organizations are thinking about the need to connect with and learn from their customers, and then how they're helping their internal teams do that. So lots of stuff to cover, but why don't we start with what is Coinbase? And then if you could say a bit more about the product or the space within Coinbase that you work on specifically. So let's start at Coinbase. What is it?
Yeah, I can kind of give a high level of how I describe crypto to friends that are not in the space. It's kind of funny because I live in New York. I have a lot of friends in finance. The first thing I always get asked when I find out I work for Coinbase, they're like, what should I buy? And I'm like, I am literally the worst person to ask for that. First of all, I'm not an investor mind. So the way I describe it is, I think there's two halves to the crypto space. There's one half that really wants to build a new banking system. They're very interested in instant cross-border payments. They're really interested in your hedging inflation, say holding value. They're interested in investing and trading, helping people grow their wealth. Then there's the other side that's much more like building a new internet, and that's the side that me and Natalie work a lot on. We work on Base, which is a section within Coinbase. And then the way I kind of describe it is we support both consumers and developers. And I liken this a lot to Web 1, if you've been working this long. The way I describe it is I work on Coinbase Wallet, which recently got relaunched as the Base app. We can talk a little bit about that. And to me, that we're building Netscape. We're building the gateway to this whole new internet. And what Natalie focuses on is helping developers. So I call it the GeoCities. It's we're giving tools for everyone to just go wild and build anything their imagination can come up with. So bringing the gateway to this brand new universe that is being built out right now.
Natalie, anything to add?
I guess something I would add is that something that we think about is just as Shalin said, that we're building a new internet. So Base is part of Coinbase, but it's so much different than the investing part. And there's people like us on base that believe that this is the new internet and it's going to be about decentralization, about ownership, about transparency. So that comes through on our research too.
That's great. And I think, well, I'm curious, it strikes me from the outside that, and granted, I know lots of user researchers and designers and experienced thinkers work at a fast pace. For those listeners, I'm using air quotes because it's always fast, even if you're at a more slow moving company. But I feel like it's probably pretty fast there. The industry is evolving, sometimes week over week. You've got governance and legislation that's evolving and trying to catch up with the amazing innovations that you all on your team are still trying to figure out, both how can it work and how can we share it with users. High level, as designers and researchers, have you had to adopt new practices? How have you sort of evolved to meet the moment that Coinbase and Base is asking of you?
Yeah, we're very fast. Like I look back now at all the other research I ever did, and I'm like, why did it take weeks to do a study? I can just pop a study in a couple days now. Um, the way that we go really fast has to do with scale. So we're a really nimble team and we think of we're a really scrappy team, thinking about like, how do we get the most bang for our buck? Because there's only 3 of us on this whole team. So we do a lot of initiatives that scale. One initiative that we do, we call it Builder Jam. We meet every single Friday. We have a panel of rotating builders that come in, and the design team actually comes every week. And they show a prototype, they show an idea, they show a really early design, and they get feedback. That's one way that we help scale the team. So that way, what we're hoping to do is leverage this more and scale it across space. So that way we can do end users too. And design is really part of the practice. And then it helps us as researchers focus on more strategic work that we can go a little deeper on. That's one way. Another way that we've really adapted to so because the space is so ever changing and our audiences are so broad, we have builders, we have end users, we have creators. And something that we've really tried to do is think about what are new ways we can meet our users where they are. So we do a lot, just like everyone now, we do a lot of remote studies. That works great for builders because they're at the computer.
Sure.
So they're developers at the computer. We're meeting them right where they are. They're just tapping on a screen, just like they already are. When we first started researching creators, and I actually worked with the designer Shalin Pei on this, we were trying to figure out how do we make this more authentic to creators? Because it's something about it feels a little bit not as fun, a little forced, not as genuine to pop on a remote interview and do a usability study. So we started this new practice called creator dinners, and we worked with marketing, and it's been great because it's been a win-win for both marketing and for research and design. So we first had a great 20-person dinner in LA. We made it fabulous. We had the marketing team helped us make the most beautiful, floral arrangements. We had we were in a fun restaurant, we had drinks, and we were able to slip in research questions throughout. So everyone, people that came, there were PMs that came, marketing came, and research and design came. We all were kind of harnessed with a few questions to ask, but it was just part of casual conversation. And then at each of the dinner tables, we had a little form that was a cute little questionnaire that was very beautifully printed out, and everyone filled it out at the end. So that's one way that we're trying to always kind of think of new approaches to meet our very vast and participants where they are. And we also want to keep up. We don't want to, we're, as we said, we're trying to start a new internet. So we don't want to use just old formats. We want to think about new ones that we can bring.
Yeah. I want to revisit that scrap because I think one of the things I'm most interested in in the open structure is how you're maintaining scrap, scale, and rigor. Shalin, how about for you in the design and user experience more broadly? How have you adapted, or what have you been learning while working at Coinbase?
There's a lot of things I think are really fascinating about just working in the crypto industry. I think one is it definitely moves fast. We kind of joke that every week is a month. It genuinely feels like that. You have people who are new, and then they're oh, congrats, you just hit your 90 days. And was what? You've only been here for 90 days?
Yeah.
It really moves crazy fast. But I think there's a few things that are actually really fascinating and unique about this industry, where one is subject matter expertise. It's I didn't work in crypto before I came to Coinbase. I worked in like big FANG companies and like tiny startups and stuff, but like I was casually interested in crypto, but this is the first time I dived into it. I had like a little bit of imposter syndrome being like, oh my God, my PM partner has been in this space for like years. How am I ever going to be able to like be a like an equal partner to him?
Sure.
And literally it was like 3 months later, I was like, oh yeah, no, we're caught up. Because it's
Awesome.
constantly changing, like there's no way to meet someone who has like 20 years of ecom experience.
Hmm.
Like it's constantly changing, and then you're kind of forced to be nimble, forced to be entrepreneur, forced to be on your feet all the time. That like even like the veterans are still constantly learning, still trying to keep up. So it's actually like this great equalizer in a way. If you're hungry and curious, like you can catch up really quickly. I think the second thing that's actually kind of pretty unique is I haven't worked in fintech before I came here. This is the closest I get to fintech. But like crypto cycles are like what, every 2 years, 3 years, we have a boom, like a bull bear cycle, right? And like I've been working long enough that like I graduated into like right before the recession in 2008 hit. I've seen recession, I've seen growth, but we've been in massive growth for a long time. And then the most recent recession, you saw so many people who've like had never experienced recession before.
Sure.
And then meanwhile, all my crypto friends are like, we do this every 2 years, we're fine. And I think it just kind of like you see people are operationally like ready to plan for that. You're ready to plan for periods of hypergrowth, ready to plan for areas of hypercontraction. And as part of leadership, like I do like the headcount planning, things like that. So when I first joined Coinbase, my team was like two designers, like two PMC designers. I think we got to like 13 during like the height of the hypergrowth period.
Wow.
And then crypto winter hit, and then we had to shrink it back down.
Hmm.
And I think that's something I find really admirable about research, because research here is actually really, really thin. So for what Natalie has to work with, she's been really, really creative and figure out ways that we can still get insights in this emerging space where we really have no idea what's going to happen next. And still be trying to like work within the resources that we have when like you have a much smaller team than you expect. You don't have a massive budget that you can work with. And then also we're a full remote company, so you don't have like a research lab or any of some of those tools that you typically are used to. But they're still able to get really creative and find ways to get things done. And especially the global aspect, it's like this industry is like still really nascent all around the world. But like you see these little pockets of innovation. So what's happening in Southeast Asia is totally different from what's happening in Africa, totally different from what's happening here. And like just being able to tap into those local communities and like see what's happening on the ground, I think is huge.
Oh, I love that. And I think what I hear is a real benefit in being in a nascent space, because so many designers and researchers often feel that imposter syndrome, and they feel like they're trying to like they have that craft and they feel confident in their craft, but they're still trying to figure out how it fits and helps the business broadly do the mission. And so each of you, as we'll learn about later, is really committed to what Coinbase and what Base is trying to do. And there isn't that, you have to learn, but there isn't quite the catch up on ramp. I feel like sometimes researchers are either off in their corner, or designers are just, I'm just trying to do my craft. I'm just going to keep doing it. The business will happen. And we've gotten to the point where that isn't going to cut it, at least if you want to have a career longer than a couple of quarters. And so there's been so many more discussions around like, how do I make the ROI of design, or how do I make the impact of research more visible? And so many of the rejoinders are like, well, learn about the business and learn how what you do plugs into the business. And it sounds like when you're joining this space or working in this space, that's just part of it. You have to understand, like, Natalie, the questions to ask in a screener. How do I include and exclude someone? How do I know if a wireframe or a prototype will even make sense? I imagine you all are thinking about AR and VR and the different spaces and places that people might think about their internet. I mean, if it is really truly Netscape. So that's really, really cool. And then the other thing, Natalie, I love that you are all thinking about more than just the product implications of your research. I think researchers and designers certainly have something to say about the brand, the voice, the authenticity of it, because for this space specifically, authenticity is key, and attracting the next 100 million customers. A lot of those folks make their decisions not just on product features and feelings of trust, but they also want to feel like the vibes are good of a place, that they like what's behind it. So I really, that's super cool to hear. I'm not sure if there's anything each of you want to add to that.
Yeah, I have so much to add. So kind of, this might be a couple different things.
Please.
One thing I was just thinking about is, Shalin, when you brought up coming in and kind of having this like imposter syndrome and learning about the space, I too have never worked in crypto before. I'd never worked in anything related to finance. I had interviewed as like core participants, children and travelers and even like QVC shoppers. But I had never, ever worked with builders and developers and specifically people deep, deep in crypto because Base is like the deepest end of crypto. And I got at, and also to add, like our peers are sometimes like the core, like Twitter kings on crypto Twitter. They're like
Wow.
leaders in the whole space. So we're not just working with like people who know what they're talking about. We're
Sure.
working with public leaders in the crypto space. And something that I had to face is getting over this imposter syndrome. And it was a really great lesson for me as a researcher. I was asked by our like head of engineering to come with him on a panel at NYU. It was me and him and another engineer. And I thought like, oh my gosh, everyone's going to find out. I don't know anything about the technology behind like the protocol and all this, all of this really deep technological experience. I was like, I'm going to be totally found out. This is it. And I realized as I was like preparing, I was like, wait a second. I know about the motivations for builders. I know about their challenges. My job isn't, I'm not an engineer. I don't need to know about the deep like workings of the technology. I need to know how to do research and I can do that. So then we did the panel. It went great. I got asked to do more. It was a hit. So like it turned like to me it was a huge lesson in being a researcher. The core skill you need, like yes, you do need to understand the business as we were talking about, but you have to be really confident in your craft and really curious. And once you can do those things, I think you can research anything.
I love that. Shalin, how about for you as a designer and as certainly someone who's in leadership thinking about what the future of design research and human centricity, again, I'm hoping this will pivot us into the next phase, but for you, are you feeling more confident? Has this unlocked new trajectories in what you thought you might be doing or will do in the future? Again, I'm not too far along, but.
Well, like, yeah, I mean, I mentioned this in the beginning. I was like casually watching crypto for like a while. I was casually watching it probably since like 2016. I have some friends investing, but at that back then kind of like looked around. I was like, okay, I think it's still too early. Might still be a fad. And then when the NFT craze took off, I was like, okay, it's been here long enough that like it or not, it's here to stay. So I want to peek under the hood to understand how it works. So that was actually one big reason why I got into the space, but it's just like, it's part of our world. It's here to stay. Same with like AI. It's like Pandora's box is open. It's here. And like, you can either like turn a blind eye to it and like listen to all the FUD that might be there. And like, I think it sounds scary and like there is some like sketchy headlines, or you can actually look at the tech and understand how it works and help shape and push it towards like a positive future. And I think that's kind of mindset. It's kind of like a bit of like what brought me in. And it just comes from a place of curiosity and positivity, as in like, we kind of know on the long scale of like innovation that like there's always this period of like that people trying to take something through against the wall, people going to try to exploit things. But then I think that if we keep investing into it, net positive comes out. So you have to come with that kind of like optimism. Just be like, let me really dig under the hood, understand tech, and let me see the future, and let's push it in that direction. And I think like that curiosity just goes really far. Just like in a space like this, I have seen like new grads and interns that are just like really good question askers, and they've excelled in their careers just by being curious, quite honestly, not being afraid of like what like box or label they've been put in. And I think that gets rewarded a lot in crypto and merchant tech in general, because everyone's asking the same questions.
I think we too often as a community of practice wait for someone to sort of tap us on the shoulder and say, hey, designer, researcher, thinker, can you help me? And so many of our stakeholders and partners don't know what they don't know. So what I admire in the two of you is you're describing how you turned this interest and curiosity, you reflected on your skill set, and then Shalin, what you're just saying, you're like, well, I can help you do that, build a better front end, or Natalie, ask better questions to like onboard a user. And again, many of our PM and engineering and design stakeholders might not. Go ahead, Shalin.
Yeah, and I would say like when I first joined Coinbase, like my team was still part of a larger org. So I had like an existing structure to kind of like fold into. I reported into design leadership. So I had a design director that could follow, and he was always setting the tone for the org. In Q4 this past year, I got reorged into Base. And when I joined Base, there was no design leadership. Like Natalie was there and they had like 2 designers, but like they reported into product. And so I was like the first person that was like design and to establish what design leadership, design and research leadership looks like here. And I report into the VP, the VP who comes from an Eng background. And I remember that first week, I was kind of like a little bit like, oh my God, like, wait, I don't report into a design leader. What do I do?
Sure.
And I realized like, wait, I am the design leader.
Yeah.
And I think one thing I was really grateful for is like, I've been working long enough at that point. I had a lot of like experience to pull from, like not crypto specific, but I was able to kind of like sit there and reflect on my career, being like, who are the people I've admired? What were the specific things that they've done that I think are amazing? And I basically wrote this doc over a weekend. It's called the How I Win doc because I had to like talk myself and hype myself into it. But there was a part in it where I was like, what does a world-class design research team look like? I started like pulling, being like, oh, I have this friend, Jenny Arden. She's actually like CDO at, I think, Zillow now. Yeah.
Shouts
But
to Jenny.
I know, but she worked on the original self-driving car at Google when I was working on
Wow.
Google search. And she used to invite me to go like design sprint with it. Like I'm not on her team, but she's doing super cutting edge stuff. And just because I was friends with her, she would be like, hey, we need more outside perspective. Do you want to come sprint with us for a week? So I gotta watch like how they would like kind of prototype that in like was like 2012 or something like that.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, there's like some really interesting things from there. She had an IDEO background, so I learned a bit about like practices that she took from IDEO. I know some people who came from Nike, and I'm just like, Nike does this really good with like product and marketing combined. Of how I think some of the larger companies, product marketing feel further away, but like Nike is very good at pulling together and having this really cohesive, compelling narrative. Oh my God, I have to pull the doc and see what else I wrote, but just like to be able to form that vision based off these like adjacent experiences and kind of like pick and choose like from your favorite leaders that you've like admired from the past, and then to be able to have the opportunity to put that from the ground up here, like that's what me and Natalie get to do right now. So I think that's like really, really exciting that like we get to define what do we think a world-class crypto design and research team looks like, and then kind of to manifest it.
So that reorg, this is a great transition. So that reorg happens wherein you're moving into Base, you recognize, hey, guess who's the design leader? Was that the moment when, I imagine that you met the rest of the team at Base and you probably bumped into Natalie and her colleagues. Was there a mission from the VPs to like, hey, we want design and research working more closely together? I get the sense that a lot of the org at Coinbase is flat, that you all want to bump into one another digitally, so to speak. But take me through the backstory, Shalin, on how you said like, okay, I want research and design to work more closely together, and then how that led to the in the open structure, because that's really what I want to linger on next. So let's start with just sort of the impetus. What's the genesis story here?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I actually, Jesse Pollock's our VP. And I would say one thing to know is that Coinbase actually runs in this PG structure. So we're already kind of decentralized internally. Like there's no like head of design. We have like separate PGs. We have PG leads, the VPs that run it. And they basically operate like mini startups internally. So basically, like Jesse can do what he wants with his org. And we've actually created a culture that feels quite different from my previous org. So actually what Jesse did when I first joined, he was just like, cool, welcome, welcome to the team. I came with a team of designers and researchers, and then he's like, here's like the ones that we had, they'll all fold in together under you. But he actually gave me the prompt. He was like, I want you to think about what you want design research to look like. And like, think about the things that was working in your old org that won't work here, and it's okay to shed it. I think that was actually really important for me to hear, because it's very easy to take old habits and bring them over and just try to force it.
Yeah.
For him to give me permission to be like, reassess that. Do you really want to do that? And I think there's a lot of things that design research across the whole company that we stand up together. But it's more through like a coalition, kind of like as a design org, we want to feel like one team, one body. But like honestly, each of our PGs have very unique needs. So there are times where we actually have a conversation like, how much do we want to lean our existing design system that the whole company uses versus we should actually invest more in custom components? And we rebranded earlier this year, and a lot of that came from an investment to like kind of like build out our own theme on top of our current design system. It lets us actually create a more unique like look and feel. I think we had a challenge with the old Coinbase wallet where there's the Coinbase retail app, the Coinbase wallet app, but we had a lot of like brand confusion because they're using similar components that kind of look the same but aren't the same. So to be able to make a much more distinct look and feel and like rebrand was something that like I would not have been able to do in the old org. So yeah, I think that was a big thing. Like I think Jesse, he understands the value of design. He doesn't have the experience to operationalize it, but he knows I can operationalize it.
Sure.
And he gave me the agency to make those calls and give me the permission. I think that went really, really far.
And then what were some of those priorities? You might not, you don't have to talk about exactly what you jettisoned or what you decided not to keep. Let's focus on what you did keep. What was important? Was it the structure? Was it a workflow cadence? Because lots of folks listening to this are probably thinking about as they head into the new year, what can I do differently to help my design and research teams work more effectively, work more collaboratively? So what was like your top 3 or 2 that you really wanted to make sure you did?
Yeah. So it's funny because like, as a people manager, I kind of joke where I say like, your people is the product that you work on, like all the same skills I use on like taking in insights and like applying them and like iterating. I just do it on the org. I know. So like I basically like retro every quarter, every 3 months, I'd be like, is this working or not? Make adjustments. That's my general guidance for everyone. It's like, don't let it get stale, adjust. And then I mentioned that Base has like a consumer facing side and developer facing side. And there's a while where we should just be one big design team, like one big design research team, one stand up, one crit. Let's just make sure we all have eyes. And then I think we did that for like 2 months, and we're like, okay, actually the needs are quite different. So we split into 2 different crits,
Sure.
2 different stand ups. And then we did that for about 6 months. And only recently we started merging again because you can see the strategy was starting to make these unified flywheels that connect both sides.
Yeah.
So I think that's the main thing I would say is just like, don't be afraid to question what's working. Don't gather feedback constantly and iterate on it. And like, it will evolve. And then, yeah, me and Natalie talk about this constantly, about like, how do we keep evolving our process and how we communicate and things like that, how to be more efficient, more effective. I talk with my product endpoints as well on the same side, but like how we do reviews and like, yeah. So I'm constantly iterating on the process.
I love to hear that because I think there's this thing in the content marketing world wherein you write about like best team structures for your research or design team. And it'll inevitably end with like the hybrid approach is good, but there won't be any like tactical and practical descriptions around what that looks like. So Shalin, what you just said, we're in like, we'll go a quarter where we're distinct, we're supporting specific partners, and then we'll come back. Even that is so useful to hear that your team is not like totally gone bananas. It sounds like it's working. There might be external factors, there might be internal factors, there might be customer needs. It sounds like it's not too much of a burden for you to revisit and check back in.
Yeah, and I think again, like we were saying, like crypto moves really fast. Like the industry's changing, our strategy is shifting, what you need changes a bit. I think another example would be like we work in a PED structure, so we tend to have like product and design as like the trio that leads different pods. And then there was a point in time where I was like, okay, we're starting to ship our org chart. I'm starting to see some like errors in our like app experience that's starting to get fragmented. So then I centralized design. I mean, there's a few different reasons why I centralized design, but it was like, cool, everyone has to go through me. And then like, I will assign designers to areas where they can be connective tissue. And like, it was just one of those things where like, maybe like a few weeks after that, like other things org-wise happened. I was like, I'm just so glad I did that in advance. And I think just like, I think change is okay and change is good. It helps you adapt. I think the skill that you learn as a leader is how to manage change management. If you can explain to people why it's happening, have an expectation so it doesn't feel like churn. Everyone's like, yes, that makes sense. Thank you. That would make my life more easy. That's like a good outcome. So I think we kind of built that into a culture where people know that it will constantly change, but like we just manage the communication as the best way that we can so it lands positively.
Natalie, big reveal. How is it going? I mean, you had Shalin come in. You were already on Base or maybe part of the reorg, but a lot of folks here are IC practitioners, they're researchers who may be operating in an agency model where they've got a big list of tickets or they're responding to an embedded product team. Talk a little bit about your week. What's a standard or a standard sprint for you? Are you talked about doing presentations, you're doing marketing collaborations. Do you support a specific part of Base? Walk us through a sort of day or week in the life of being a researcher at Base or on Base.
Sure. Well, I always love I love research being part of design. I feel like it adds, when research goes out into the org, it adds if we have like this extra arm that are there to be kind of our are advocates in the room. And so I always really appreciate being part of a design team and having direct designers that we can always lean on. I think it always helps push our work further. A day in the week. Okay. So we're a team of 3. And we are I'm truly so impressed by our team on how fast we operate as researchers. Here, I'll just give you an example. I'll tell you about a
Please.
week that's going on right now. So the team that is launching this really big app, it's called the Base app. They are in an in-person sprint right now for a whole week in San Francisco. So 2 researchers are there, and they are in the room with designers while they're iterating on some of their designs, getting it closer and closer for the big launch. The researchers are in the room just to make sure that their findings are going to be put into the product.
Wow.
So it's really cool. So they're working as advisors and advocates for the users, right there live on the spot. And they're there, the designers are asking them questions, they're giving direct feedback based on research. And in that process, Priyanka, an amazing researcher, she noticed a question that kept coming up. So this was yesterday, Tuesday, she put together a study that's going to happen tomorrow, and she's going to run the study tomorrow and then have the findings by the end of the day. So that way the team can iterate and include them on Friday. So that's an example of just how fast and scrappy we are. And afterwards, I'm yeah, why did it used to take 3 weeks?
I was just thinking the same thing. I was like, why wouldn't a team that claims to be customer-centric and responsive to feedback do what you just described? You have someone from Shalin's team designing, working on the end thing. There's a researcher who's either been in session, has desk research, or some combination of therein to say, actually, I've got some data that shows this. A responsive, open, affable designer's cool, I can put that to practice, and it's better for the end user and the business in general. I mean, is it that your stakeholders and the partners are more open? Shalin, is leadership, because again, there are some product folks that are simply looking for validation research. They kind of know what they're going to build and they want to build that thing, and research can often be a launch blocker. Natalie, what you just described sounds certainly in part that Coinbase is being responsive and really innovative. Can you talk, Shalin, from the leadership? Is that something that is at the base of, pun intended, of Coinbase, and what's happening is engineering, product, marketing? It sounds like folks are interested in research and design as a practice, as something that forwards the business.
Yeah, I definitely think there's appetite for it. And I also feel while I say it's PED led, that's our format, it does mean design omics, I have to see a table, and designer research are kind of joined at the hip.
Yeah.
So it kind of comes along that way. The other thing that I do know is I think there's actually a lot of blurring of roles. I think that's a positive thing. I personally have never been a person who's design stay or design box. I'm not the person who's going to be I'm going to go away into my design tower and come back with technical prototypes.
Yeah.
I've always been a very hands-on, interactive, collaborative type of designer, and I actually support this for everyone. I did a little bit of coding back in the day. I remember at Google there was this point where I wandered into a room with a bunch of PMs that are drinking beers. Apparently they were all pulling their own SQL queries to look at to actually pull the data, and I was like, "Wait, what are you doing? I'm so curious. Teach me." And I see that a lot in general. I think I see our researchers do more than with actually consequently research. But it's everyone just we just want to win. So everyone do whatever it takes to win. I've seen PMs jump into Figma and make mocks when design is thin. I was I've always been you know what? I'm supportive of it. Just make sure it goes through crits. We have eyes on it. Go through the normal process. But just because you don't have a designer in your title does not mean you can't design. You have a good idea, share it. It's just a tool of communication. Yeah, but I see product, eng, design, research, I see it all blur quite a bit. Everyone's just generally multifaceted and curious humans who want to solve big problems together. So I think that kind of attitude just lays a really healthy foundation.
Yeah. And you alluded to or mentioned AI earlier, and that's something that some researchers and certainly designers at Figma is don't worry, anyone can quote unquote design. The verb and the noun. Natalie, as someone who is doing both, you're researching and you're a researcher, does the scrap and the openness of your colleagues to get involved, does that mean that you have more space to use your expertise in areas you really like? Where do you find yourself? Because when I hear scrap, I think okay, you've got to be really strict in prioritization and really careful and considered in your time. Where are you really deploying those research skills as a research expert and empowering your colleagues to make use of research to help them and their work be better? If that makes sense. I don't know if that.
Yeah, totally. Okay. I think the biggest way our research team uses our skills in a scrappy way is influence. So I think that's like kind of a part of research that kind of gets forgotten.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is our team base is truly like, I actually haven't ever had this in most any other place I've worked, is obsessed with talking to people. So there is absolutely like, research never needs to fight to be heard because everyone wants to know like what do our users, what do our builders say. So what that means is everyone truly is talking to users in all different ways. So a lot of us are really deeply embedded in the builder community, going to like meetups on their own. I mean, truly people are part of this space, going to conferences. People are active on Twitter, collecting feedback that way. And people are trying to onboard everyone, everyone that they know. The interesting, I think, balance that research has to play there is because everybody is talking to everybody. It's such a core part of our culture is that we need to make sure that the outliers aren't just being heard. And that the importance of research, I think, is even sometimes more important because we need to demonstrate, like we are asking specific questions. We're using methods that make sure that what we're saying is reliable and can be replicated. We're making sure that the quality of our insights we can really back it and that we really trust the recommendations that we're giving. So when everyone's kind of talking to everyone, it's so important for research to be heard. And so the ways that we've done that as a team, I think one way that I really love is that we have brought in-person research back. And that's something that it's like, like the oldest methodology, but to me,
Sure.
I didn't even used to think of it as a methodology.
Right.
But now to me, it's like the new thing that I just like love bringing back. We do that because we find that when our stakeholders actually see, they're not just asking the normal questions that they ask people. They're not just listening to the loudest person on X. They see our, like our participants who we've curated based on the research study, they see like how they're going through the product. They can hear it so much better. So we do that. We're a remote company, but we've been doing that as much as possible whenever we have an offsite, whenever there's one of these in-person sprints, and at conferences, even like when we know our team is going to be there, we use it as an opportunity to hold focus groups or some kind of research session where our team can observe. So that's been my favorite methodology to bring back. And I'm a big proponent. And I think to me, it's a great way to help the research be heard.
Yes. Yes. I know that for some research or for some remote and hybrid companies, that physical, but also that cognitive dissonance or distance from the user or the customer can sometimes feel like an impediment or a hurdle from really building and shipping that great thing that doesn't need a ton of rework or doesn't bump into market fit that could have been revealed with a couple of focus groups with the engine product. And I don't want to pick on those folks, but the builders internally can sometimes just see like, oh, if we did that, I think that would happen again and again. In all of this scrap and the flex and the hybrid, how are you all thinking, Shalin? Maybe this is a question for you. How are you thinking about documentation, the collection and the archiving of all the great work that's happening? Because I'm also hearing from a lot of research leaders in particular that are thinking about like, okay, my team is doing great work. We're helping make the business hit its goals. How do we sort of repository all of that, make it a library so that new people can come in and kind of get a download on what has been happening, or someone who has a question can answer it? How are you thinking about sort of storing and collecting all the great stuff your team is doing?
Quite honestly, I'm not great at it. And it's interesting because I think like this industry moves so fast, things go stale really quickly. Like I remember when I first joined, my friend who joined like 3 months before me, he had an onboarding guide. He's like, here's what I did to like onboard me into the space. By the time he gave it to me, half of it was still relevant. And then by the time that I was like, oh, maybe I'll just like update this and maintain it. And then a friend joins like 3 months later. I'm like, oh, sorry, this is like completely out of date.
Wow.
So I think that like the product innovation is happening that fast. I think the research repository, like now I can speak more towards it, but it's like, it's kind of fascinating because I see people kind of do lit reviews and like, there's always a blend of like, is this lit review still relevant or is it worth doing something that new because it's already changed enough? So yeah, it's quite honestly, like, I don't have a good method for it, but I'm also kind of TBD on how much we need a good method for it.
Yeah. Well, then how about when you're doing the upward influence that I'm confident you do, or the cross horizontal, when you meet with your other leaders in product or eng, are they asking questions about your team's work, or how are you framing that work? Because that's another conversation. Sometimes leaders are like, well, that button was really good, or that delightful experience, we spread that throughout the experience. Talk us through those
Oh yeah.
conversations.
So we do planning on an annual cycle and a quarterly cycle. And I've always been a very big proponent of like, you need to align your goals with how the company structures their planning. Because, and I also think a lot of tech companies, they tend to plan with the eng first mindset. It's like, that's what's actually going to get shipped.
Right.
So like the prioritization cut lines get based on like how many engineers are available.
Sure.
But then what I see happen is like things that do take up capacity of time and are influential don't actually get documented. So I've always been a big proponent of like, we sign up for OKRs. Like design and research we have our own OKRs. Whether it gets folded into the top line OKRs or it's happening at your like team level, is like TBD based on like what the strategy is at the moment. But like, or even if we just do it for ourselves and just never gets published anywhere, it's still a good exercise to be snapping to that. And there'll be moments in time where there's something that you'll really want to fight for and make sure it's like aligned on and actually documented and like scored against.
Sure.
We did a big rebrand that got launched in July, and we actually had quality goals. So there was like rebrand execution goals, which was design owned OKRs, and then there was a quality measurement goal that was research owned. So, and those were actually like, I advocated for them to become top line for our team, not for the org, but for our team.
Mhm.
So it was actually documented, tracked against, right alongside all your product and eng owned OKRs.
Wow.
But yeah, I think like that top down level signaling of like, we say we're PED, like let's be PED then. Like we have things that we individually have to be design and research led that we are going to own to make sure that everything's successful.
Yeah, I think that is another great. You're killing it, Shalin, with this, like, again, tactical and practical. That's the seat at the table for my, like, sure. I mean, if you're in the meeting room and you're advocating for it, but in terms of what the business reflects on and what leadership looks at, it's that. It's the OKR retro. Did we hit, were we 0 to 1? If you have a line there, that's your representation. And I know it doesn't feel like very much because it could just be 1K or 1O, but that's yours. And so kudos to you for doing that, because then your team, Natalie, can look at that and say, how are we working toward that, against that, and I think that builds a cohesion, which can also kind of fight some of that malaise that experienced teams can sometimes feel like, what are we doing? How does what we do impact this?
Yeah, that's kind of fascinating because I think like people are always like, oh, well, the PM owns the OKRs. And so like they don't feel like they have permission, right? I'm like, what's the worst going to happen? You have edit access to the doc, right? Align in.
Yeah.
Worst thing is someone's going to delete it. I know.
Right.
But at least you're putting your stake out there, what you care about. And then like, you're not interfering with anyone else's goals, but that gives you something for accountability. If you know you're going to get scored against it at the end of the quarter, then you're going to be held accountable to actually completing it.
Yes. And that there's clarity there. Natalie, you talked about in-person research, and I love that that's still, it's weird not being that old, but they're like, yeah, that's just research, like being in a focus group room or observing someone in an aisle or being in home with them. How else has your research practice changed working as closely as your team does with designers in that PED or in that structure? Have you talked about scrap. Is there another example you might share in how you've evolved or adapted your practice to be influential in and responsive to this structure and the folks you're working closely with?
Yeah. Okay. So this, I think some researchers might have different views on this, and my views have changed on this over time. So something that we have done a lot at Coinbase in general, and in the beginnings of Base, was something called partner-led research. So we kind of named that as like a research team. And what it means is we are so strapped thin. So if you have a research request and we can't get to it, maybe you could do it yourself and we'll help you. At first, when I heard this, I was like, oh my gosh, we're just like letting people just do their own research,
Sure.
which I'm sure a lot of other researchers have kind of been like trained to feel. And of course, there's kind of risk in that, right? Like maybe, like, how do you know that they're going to ask the right questions? How do you know there's going to be the right methodology? How do you know they're going to make the right synthesis and insights and it's not totally biased on something that they want it to be? Um, but ultimately, I came to the belief that when our team wants to talk to our users and they want insights, that research should be an enabler. So that's been a lot of the designers on the team have taken advantage of that. So it's something that like some designers will come and they'll say like I have this big research question, and we'll help them figure out what the methodology should be. We'll help them even recruit. We'll help them figure out the tools, and then but they do it, they lead it, and we'll go over their synthesis with them before they kind of share it, but ultimately it's theirs. And I think that's a really nice way to ultimately I've come to this belief that research really should be for everyone, that we shouldn't be gatekeepers to it, and we should just be helping people find the best way to collect feedback.
And does that leave you, I mean, you alluded to it, but that probably leaves you and your team to do the more challenging or the more requiring research specific expertise kinds of questions, the ideation sessions or the generative sessions or the in-person. It's hard to moderate a focus group. And so is that one of the outcomes of that kind of a project or program?
Exactly. If we have a bunch of different research requests and priorities to balance, the most likely partner-led research would end up being something that's more on the usability side or something on the
Sure.
unmoderated side, which would free us up to do more strategic work.
Yeah. Shalin, is that kind of I'm asking you to paint with a broad brush here, but lots of the folks listening are building their own teams. They might be founders who are thinking about how to deploy resources for their design, research, and product. You've been at lots of different places who have built and shipped lots of interesting products and experiences. Take me to 2027 and beyond. What's the future of design and research working in these omni-channel product experiences? Is it this hybrid PED model? Is it this self-service model? Walk us through some of your preferences and sort of what you think, given both the places you've been, where you are now, and where you think it's going.
Yeah. So I tend to think of like impact as like executional impact and strategic impact. And I think like at the rate that we run, we end up focusing a lot on executional impact because it's immediate, short term. We're pivoting, we're very nimble. And I think sometimes that puts us in the position where you end up kind of being kind of reactive. And it's hard to like lift your head up, actually think long term. However, if you sit in sessions with our CEO, he is looking like 10 years beyond down the line.
Right.
So I was like, how do we find the way to balance both? Like, you do want to make sure the team is well supported. You can and we are scrappy, the industry moves and you pivot really, really quickly. But at the same time, there are these really large macro questions that are unknowns. And like, how can we put research in place where they can actually get ahead of that? Like get ahead of our like 2026 planning, get ahead of the dream is always for design to be ahead of eng and then for research to be ahead of that. It's very hard for us to do that. But I think that's kind of where I want to figure out how we can shift our energy towards and have research be asking the questions that like no one even knows to ask yet. I do think with like how thin research is here, it means you have to get really creative to make sure the day-to-day and like the more executional impact is well supported. So I think that's an area where it's like the self-serve models, especially because we have people who are so excited who are so excited for it.
Sounds like it.
You have the appetite for it. Let's give you the tools.
Yeah.
Run, be free. It's also an area that like me and Natalie have been like looking at like what can AI automate?
Right.
It's really, really nascent, but same thing. AI changes every 6 months, 3 months, whatever. And like there is a world where I've seen someone on crypto Twitter saying that they were like built like a little agent that can like basically automate usability testing. I was like, really? I don't believe it really works yet, but that is an interesting thread to pull on. And like it's actually interesting. We hired a super builder.
What's that?
We have one engineer whose full-time job is to figure out how to like supercharge our workflows with AI.
Wow.
So like he started out much more in like the eng efficiency angle.
Sure.
So he did he's been kind of like finding like all of our engineers are all on Cursor. They like I think the eng team has shrunk in half, but has not lost any speed. It's kind of like shocking. And he's been building some internal tools, some that will actually like, if you have like a really good linear ticket, it can automate the PR and then N just has to kind of like review and make sure it works. And we've been like fine tune the format for that. But then you start expanding to be like design polish, like all those like P2 tasks that like never get handled. The
Sure.
designers just write a really good ticket, it just gets
Yes,
automated.
the paper cuts. Yeah.
So like we're starting here, but I am actually looking a lot at, I've asked them to do exploration, be like, how feasible is this crazy idea? How feasible is that crazy idea? So I think me and I have been kind of like looking at like what are some like areas that AI could benefit research, and like one is like how is the industry evolving? Are there like off the shelf tools that we can use that will get that done? And then also it's like if we have access to a super builder, we can have him investigate to be like, what can we automate? It's all very nascent and all very like early, but like those are kind of things that we're excited by. So that will free up our research team to actually do the like macro, like big picture thinking.
But even that decision to bring in someone with the expertise of the technology and hopefully now much more awareness of the business and how the teams work to make those calls and to prioritize those things, as opposed to just like, okay, we bought a bunch of AI tools, be better, everyone, where that just feels like, well, but they're going to replace me or this. It's so much more thoughtful. I got to imagine as a leader, that's helpful to have a super builder. Cool name. Shouts to the super builder.
Shout out to Chintan, who is the Eng director that like advocated for it and hired it.
Yes.
Like basically building that whole case out.
Yeah. All right, Natalie, quick version of this. There's, again, a lot of people also who are transitioning into or are new in the design and specifically the research space. Can you give me a stop, start, continue for folks who are trying to get their first or their next research job? What should they stop, start, and continue from your POV? You've been in a couple of different places. You're now at Coinbase grinding. What should we stop, start, and continue as research professionals?
Okay, great question. I think, okay, this is going to be, as we say in Coinbase, a spicy take.
Yes, we're here for him.
Okay, so I've been thinking a lot about, obviously, we all are, about AI in our work. And something I've come to think about is kind of the opposite of like, we all think about how can we use more AI, but I've been thinking a lot about what human strengths do we as researchers have that we should be doubling down on if we can use AI for things. So what are our unique human strengths as researchers? And I think, to me, I'm sure a lot of listeners will have a lot of good additions. They are being authentic and genuine, having someone real to talk to. Biting into like a real orange is obviously always way better than like a fake orange juice. So I think that's always going to be true with humans. It's going to be influence, as we've talked about, and it's going to be asking the right questions. And I think those are our three human strengths as researchers: authenticity and connection, influence, and asking the right questions. And so to me, as a researcher now, I want to really double down my strengths in those areas, because I'm hoping that AI will be able to use AI in a place where, I don't have to worry about like recruiting any participants.
Right. Yeah.
I don't have to even some, and this is the spicy take part, even some of our methodologies will be automated. And we'll be able just to like plug things in, and other people will be able to do it. But our strengths as researchers are going to be asking the right questions and connection and influence. So those are the areas I really want to work on personally, on like what we were talking about earlier. How do we make sure our research is heard? How do you make sure you bring the team along? How do you ask the right questions? How do you know, as Shalin just said, like how do you ask questions that people don't even know that they should be asking?
Yeah.
So I think those are what researchers should focus on. And if I were starting out in my career now, I would just be kind of just researching some good advice I heard from a good research friend once was, if you want to get into research and you're not, just start researching at your company. Just start doing it, start being curious, start doing it on your own, because it's such a hard field to break into. So sometimes that's a way to do it if you're already have a start to your career, but not as a researcher. And it all starts with curiosity.
Love that. Shalin, anything to add?
I would agree with that. I think it all starts with curiosity. And I do a little bit of mentoring outside of work for like, I've been watching how the industry is in this current recession.
Sure.
The job market's really, really hard.
Yeah.
And like, quite honestly, AI is out of the box. It's upending a lot of things. And I think the number one thing I've been telling people is like, you can't stop learning. Like I see some people who have gotten to a point where they're like, they were laid off, right? And then they've had like a long drought of like struggling at hiring. But like you look at their portfolio and their portfolio is like frozen in time for when they got laid off. But the industry is still evolving. There's so much happening. There's new tools. And I see the people that are just like, cool, I don't have a full-time job, but I'm still learning. Let me talk about that. Let me tweet about like this thing that I learned with this new tool I tinkered with. Like, I actually think it's really important during this specific period of time to make sure you're constantly upskilling. Because it's just changing a lot right now. And like, quite frankly, I've thought for myself, like I've been design leadership for a long time. And I kind of feel like the industry is moving in a way where I need to like go take on a personal project, just get my hands dirty again.
Sure.
Because it's changing enough. And like, I don't want to be too disconnected from where the industry is. So I would say that's the big thing. Like stay curious, stay hungry, don't get complacent, and like keep learning, never stop learning, and do it openly, do it publicly, let people know, contribute to the conversation. We're all figuring it out together.
I appreciate that. And it's efficacious. We can all do it. So no matter if you're a junior researcher, a design leader, or maybe a founder, you can take much of what Shalin and Natalie are saying and put it to use. Thank you so very much for the time, y'all. Follow these folks on LinkedIn. Certainly stay close to Coinbase and Base because there sounds like some really interesting things coming. Thank you again for the time, Shalin and Natalie.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.